Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 5-game Major League Baseball slate. So this slate is very good. Uh, Even for a small slate, it's one of my favorite small slates that we've had in a while. There's two clear-cut pitchers. We do have a couple other GPP options, but there are two clear-cut pitchers today. And we have some good bats across the board, and then we have some nice stacks today that can work out. So let's go ahead and get started. So we have 5 games, that's 10 teams. From pitching perspective, Evoldi and Cabrera are the top two guys. Now, Cabrera is facing Colorado, who's the weakest batting team on the slate. They also get the benefit of having a high K rate. They do not hit a lot of home runs, at least on the road, and they are just average when it comes to the batting average on the season so far. I do like Cabrera a lot here as he has the best strikeout stuff on the slate outside of Rodon for New York Yankees, and so he draws a lot of upside in this matchup, also with the weakest opponent. The next guy I like here is Evaldi for Texas. Now, he has a nice benefit here of going up against Washington. Now, Washington doesn't strike out a ton, but they don't hit a lot of home runs either, and they do have a low batting average as a team. So I do suspect that he's going to have an opportunity to have a pretty good game here. His K rate is almost been as good as Cabrera has been so far this season. He's had some really solid games, so he had a couple low K rate games, and he is going to probably give up a run or two, but that's okay. As long as he gets a few strikeouts, then that can definitely help us offset that, and he can be a top option on the slate. And both these guys are less expensive today than typical expensive plays, so I think it's with their upside today, especially with a lot of lackluster pitching options. They definitely have a lot of upside here. And even if you use both of them, you can still average $3,900 per player in the other positions, which is actually pretty doable today. Obviously, you don't have to play that way, so you can go with Carlos Rodon at pitcher as well. Now, Rodon is facing Baltimore, who is a tough offense this season so far. However, this series has been not as dominant for Baltimore as some of the past ones. So they do have a good batting average and a good strikeout rate. But I think Rodon has the best opportunity for a good strikeout game here of anybody on the slate. But there is a risk of a lot of runs on this one as well. And if we look at the overall expectation of this game, this is one of the higher scoring games on the slate with a 9-run over/under. All the other games, with the exception of San Francisco Boston, are 8 or below. The San Francisco Boston game has a 9.5 over/under as well, so do keep that in mind. With that said, those are the pitchers I do like. I don't really think it's too wise to go to anybody else because the strikeout rates are just too low, and it's going to be hard to really pay down too much here outside of Rodon. But again, you don't have to today. The way that this slate has kind of wrapped up, we have some good value teams on this one. So looking at our catchers, we have top overall option in Rutschman for Baltimore. Obviously, he's a little bit risky today. He hasn't done much against the Yankees in the series, and all three of these games have been low scoring. So at some point, these two teams are going to have a big scoring game, and this might be it. But Rutschman would definitely be a guy that I would consider if you want to go with the Baltimore stack. However, we can get cheap here with Texas's Heim as he's my top overall guy here at this position. I think he's a great play on the slate. A good matchup here. I expect Texas to have a pretty solid game here and be a good upside game for him. But if you want to go even cheaper, you can go with Patrick Bailey for San Francisco. This game has a high total, and he's definitely interesting on the slate. And then also Connor Wong, who's even a little bit cheaper than him for Boston. He looks a great play. If he starts today, he'll be somebody I would definitely consider here, being dirt cheap and helps you pay up other positions. So based on what you need from the price range here, you've got different ranges here that we can really play with. So I do like the position at catcher, and I think all those guys have a lot of upside. Looking at first base, this is where we're going to get some nice value to start off with Lamont Wade Jr. for San Francisco. He is going to be a top overall option here at first base. He has only hit one home run this season, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well. He's also getting on base, which even with walks and stuff, which gives him some fantasy point upside as well. Now, he has been a little bit inconsistent, but this game being in Boston does give a benefit to the San Francisco Giants, and I do think that they have a lot of upside in this matchup. If you wanted to pay up a little bit more at this position, then Mountcastle is a good way to go. This Baltimore stack is interesting. It's going to be somewhat hard to roster with the prices, but I do think he's an interesting option on the slate with some home run upside. A couple other value plays at this position that we do like quite a bit here is going to be Dahlbeck. for Boston. He really draws good potential here. Now, he has not done much to start the season, but he's had a couple of good games in a row now, and he draws a very favorable price point at just $2,200. He can also play at first or third base, and I do think he fits better at third base, so do keep that in mind. But he's a good cheap play here. And then also Josh Bell is another cheap option for Miami. I think Miami's going to be a popular kind of sneaky stack today, and Bell is somebody you can fit in that's nice and cheap and helps you pay up at other positions. Looking at second base, we're going to start off with this being pretty expensive uh, uh, position, with Simeon being the top overall option. He does draw good metrics for this game. However, I do like Luis Arias for Miami a lot today as well. He's not a home run hitter, but he can score some fantasy points. Now his price is coming up some, which is a little bit irritating because he's not really a home run guy, but he can get a couple hits, then he can definitely pay off at this price point. So he's definitely somebody I like quite a bit here. But if you wanted to go a little bit cheaper, you could go with Estrada for San Francisco. The San Francisco Boston game is definitely a stackable game today, and I do like Estrada here. He's had some pretty decent games lately as well. And then Torres is a kind of a Hail Mary option for New York Yankees here. He's probably a good one-off play. He has really looked good a lot this season, and he's only had a handful of really good games, but he's still priced down here, so he's definitely worth a look. Looking at third base, we do like Matt Chapman a lot for San Francisco today. He's a little pricier than I'd like him to be, but he's a viable option on the slate, and I expect this game to be high scoring, and he's definitely going to be somebody that's going to have some upside here. I also like Devers for Boston, though he is very expensive today, and he's really overpriced for what he's done so far, but he's had 3 straight games where he's done good, and I expect him to continue that. I think Boston's going to be a popular stack on the slate. And obviously, I mentioned already that Dahlbeck can play here at the third base as well, and he does fit in here better being dirt cheap. So do make sure he's in the starting lineup, but he looks like he'll be good to go today. Looking at shortstops, Abrams for the Washington Nationals is a nice one-off for Washington. He's probably one of the few guys in that Washington slash Colorado game that Washington or Colorado teams that I actually like some potential in, and Abrams has been absolutely phenomenal so far this season. So I do like his upside, though he's fairly expensive, and he's not super ideal to roster given that price point. But you could go with Corey Seager for Texas now. He has really struggled to hit the ball a lot. He's striking out too much, but he does have that home run upside today, and he does draw good metrics for this game. But I do like a couple guys that are cheaper at this position, one being Rafaela for Boston. He's a good cheap play here again. He has been inconsistent so far, but he's had some really solid games, and he does have some home run upside in this matchup. And then Nick Ahmad for San Francisco is just a Hail Mary play. He does have tendency to have a couple multi-hit games occasionally, and he definitely has that potential today. So looking at the outfielders, our top 4 guys are going to be Juan Soto, as Chisholm Jr., Aaron Judge, and Tyler O'Neill. I really do like Chisholm today, and I do like Tyler O'Neill a lot. Both these 2 guys are going to be somewhat hard to roster together, but I do think if you can fit one of those guys in, you could definitely look pretty happy about that. And some value plays here will be Lee for San Francisco, Soler for San Francisco, Conforto for San Francisco, and also Yaz for San Francisco. All 4 of those guys have a lot of potential depending on who's in the starting lineup today, and they can play in the outfield. I do think using 1 or 2 of those guys is definitely advantageous on the slate. A couple other guys that aren't on San Francisco you could look at is Brandon Nimmo, though he's a little bit pricey today. Ref Snyder is a very interesting play for Boston as he's cheap, and he falls in the category of one-off situation plays that I like. Same goes for Ian Happ. He kind of fits in that situational matchup today. And then De La Cruz for Miami is a good option from the Miami Marlins. I also like Anthony Santander as kind of a Hail Mary play at this position. So let's go ahead and look at our stacks now. I think we do have some very popular stacks today. I'm going to be trying to make some different lineups with these stacks here, and this is what I got. So several of these teams have more than 5 guys that we do like a lot because of the matchups, so that is something to consider today. But Texas is the top overall stack with Simeon, Garcia, Seager, Langford, Heim, and Lowe. You could probably choose between Garcia and Seager and then go with Langford, Heim, Lowe, and Simeon. I think that's a pretty solid way to go with that stack. Looking at Boston, now I don't think Devers and Duran are must plays. I think O'Neill is a must play in this stack. I think Ref Snyder Dahlbeck, and Rafaela Earl, and then Wong as well at catcher. He's a great catching situation here uh, for that kind of stack. And then Devers and Duran can be guys that you could just swap out from these other guys. But this is a very cheap stack for what it's got for the upside that it has today. Boston is favored to win, and it's the highest scoring game on the slate. And these guys do jump off the page as really solid options. Looking at the Yankees, going to be an expensive stack and going to be somewhat hard to roster, but Soto and Judge definitely have a lot of upside. Volpe is a little bit expensive today, but I do like him. Stanton, Verdugo, and Torres all have some upside today, but I would probably skip on Stanton if you want to go with Verdugo and Torres. But I don't love Torres today. He's kind of one-off option there. Looking at San Francisco, this is a nice cheap stack here with Lee, Wade Jr., Soler, Conforto, Chapman, Estrada, Yas, Bailey, and Ahmed. Depending on who starts this game is pretty much who you're going to want to utilize in the stack. But I do think that you definitely want to try to get Lee, Wade Jr., and Soler in there. And then Conforto has a lot of potential as well as Chapman. But if we look at if Estrada draws a start or if Yaz draws a start, then they definitely have some upside as well. Looking at this Miami stack here, um, I do think this is a very good stack here with Chisholm and Reyes and De La Cruz, Bell and Gordon, and these guys get a boost to the lefties, which is nice here as well. And I think that's a very favorable stack here. It's a little gonna be it's probably gonna be a little sneaky today. Looking at the Mets, Alonso, Nemo, Lindor, Marte, and Batty are the top options. I don't love the stack. It's expensive and it's not really that great. For Baltimore, this is a very risky stack because of the low total, but I do think this game has some potential for a big high total with Mountcastle, Santander, Richmond, Westberg, Batillo, and McCann. Now, it's going to be expensive and hard to roster that one. Looking at the Cubs, the Cubs have Hop, Bush, Morel, Crow, Armstrong, and Tachman at the top overall guys. It's a very risky stack. I don't love this game at all. Has a low total, and I don't think either team's going to do all that particularly well. Looking at the Washington Nationals, if you want to use anybody from this team, Abrams is the guy. But from a stackable perspective, Abrams, Menendez, Winker, uh, Garcia Jr., and Ruiz are the top ones. And then for Colorado, McMahon has been the overall top guy for a while, but this game does get a boost to the righties a little bit. And so if you wanted to go super contrarian and use the Colorado stack, Tavera, McMahon, Doyle, Blackman, and Montero would be the way to do it, but that's definitely high risk, high reward on the slate. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free